Hi there, welcome to Lush Living. Today's topic is about one exercise that actually works your glutes, your hamstrings, it works your hips, it works your core, almost like your whole entire body. And it's very simple, so that's the key. You can do it from anywhere. But anyways, I'm Katie Lush, the creator of Lush Living, so thanks for joining me today. I'm coming to you from downtown Chicago at Chicago River North Pilates, the studio that I teach at and own. So thanks for joining. All right, so let's dig right in. This exercise, I posted about it yesterday on Instagram, but it is called arabesque or single leg glute contraction, which is a mouthful. So we'll just call it arabesque. But anyways, all you need is a countertop or maybe a stool or a chair, which is what I've got right here. And you'll come to standing. So hopefully you can see my feet for this one. But the first element of this exercise is called a hip hinge. And basically what you're trying to do is if your spine were like a rod and you had that rod kind of glued to your back, you're going to start with a hinge where you're moving at your pelvis to tilt your body forward, and it's moving sort of in one straight line from head to tail, and then slowly back up. So that's a hip hinge in case if you're unfamiliar with that motion, but you're bending at your hip, not rolling at your waist to take you forward. And depending on your flexibility, you may not go very low. You might just stop about here, and that's plenty. Whenever your pelvis stops moving, so do you. So it starts with a hip hinge. So you have a countertop or something out in front of you, and you're gonna think of, again, pivoting in the deep hip socket to lean you forward, and then you're gonna rest your hands on the surface. In a perfect world, your hands would actually be right underneath your shoulders, and you would be at your maximum hip hinge. So something like this is pretty good for me. Okay, so step 2, you're gonna shift your weight a little bit on your right leg. You're gonna drive your right heel down into the floor and just levitate that left foot off the ground. And hopefully you can kind of see me. I'm gonna move you back just a little bit because I want you to be able to see my feet because that's important. But here I am, I'm in my hip hinge. I'm resting my arms on something. I'm keeping my hip hinge. I'm gonna shift to my right foot, drive the right heel down, 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 and float my left foot with a straight knee off the floor. So my left hip is actually a little bit higher to the ceiling in comparison to the right. I'm in a little bit of a twist. But I'm just dangling the leg below the hip. So that's sort of phase 2. And then you'll level off the feet, and you'll try the same thing on the other side, where you shift a little bit of weight to the left foot, you drive the left heel down, 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 down to float the right foot off the ground, again with a straight knee. It's almost like the leg is just dangling below the hip. And I'll turn and face you, and you might be able to see it a little better. But I'll get down. Actually, I'm gonna give you a not so cute pose, but I'm shifting and I'm floating a hip off. You can see the twist, and then the other one off. Pardon my tush. But anyways, so you start with that as your second element of this exercise. You shift your weight, you drive your right heel down, 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 and float your left foot off the floor, and you balance and stay. So that in and of itself is actually a lot. So if this is really, really hard, then I would just start with this, of just little foot floats, alternating legs. And then when that starts to get a little bit easier, move forward, you can add what's called the arabesque, where you transfer your weight to one foot, you drive the heel down, 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 down to float that left foot off the ground with a straight knee, and I'm gonna lift that left leg up into the air behind me and hold and stay. And I will scooch forward out of the frame, and that's what it looks like. So I'm balancing on my base leg. My left hip is slightly twisted to the ceiling, but when I bring my leg behind me, I'm trying to keep the toes pointing straight down to the floor, as opposed to something that looks like a turned out pelvis and leg. I'm rotating it so my hip bones and my knee and my foot are all pointing to the ground. And then after you've held that for a couple breaths, you try the other side. So you shift the weight to the left leg, you drive the left heel down, 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 down to float the right leg up, and then you sweep it up into the air behind you. The hips are square to the floor, the knee is square to the floor, the foot is square to the floor. And you hold and breathe, hold and breathe, hold and breathe, and then you come on out of it. And I gotta tell you, the longer you hold it, the harder it is. So all the more reason that you wanna hold it for a period of time. So I'm gonna scooch so you can kind of see me a little bit better, but you do your hip hinge forward, you shift your weight onto your right leg, you drive the right heel down and float the left foot off. You can see my little bit of a hip shift, and then you sweep that left leg into the air, and basically I'm in a straight line from head to heel. Now, if this leg isn't flexible, the one that's up in the air, it could be down here. It really doesn't matter how high it goes. What matters is that you're shifting your weight back over your supporting leg. So if anything, I'm kind of leaning backward as I'm lifting my leg versus leaning forward onto my hands. The weight is shifted back so that my base leg is taking and accepting the majority of the load. And then same thing on the other side. You stick your tush out, you make sure it's neutral. When you do that foot float, check in with your pelvis and ribs, and then float the leg up into the air. Keep backing your weight up over your supporting heel, and just hold and breathe, hold and breathe, hold and breathe. It's a lot of work in that base leg and glute. And then you sweep the leg down and slowly come up to standing, and then take a walk around and just kind of see what that feels like through the hamstrings and glutes. You're gonna feel the back of the leg sort of driving you forward, which is sort of the hope, yeah? So it's small, it's simple, it doesn't look like there's a lot, but when it comes to your form and sort of the alignment points, it makes a really big difference on like what's going on in your body. So, quick review. It starts with a hip hinge. When you do a hip hinge, what ends up happening is that the pelvis starts moving, and then the hamstrings are tight so it stops, so then the ribs continue to go, but the pelvis has not. So from a side vantage point, I'm a little bit tucked under my tail, but a little extended through my ribs, and it looks like I'm really low, but my pelvis has actually physically stopped moving. So I could get my head really low to the floor, but it's not because my pelvis is moving, it's because I'm bending and rounding my back. So that's not lovely. We want to keep the spine neutral and pivot at the hip socket, and when my pelvis stops moving, which is about, a little less than 90 degrees, that's where I stop. You're gonna wanna gather through the ribs a little bit so that the ribs are not the leader. Keep them a little contained so again, you're neutral like a rod's in your back. When you shift onto one leg, you're gonna wanna watch that you don't accidentally tuck your tail under because it's so extreme in the hamstring, but that you keep your pelvis neutral. It's gonna really load that base leg excessively when you keep a neutral pelvis. So again, round back cat, no. Neutral, yes. And then you just keep practicing the foot floats. You don't want to transfer the weight excessively. Keep it kind of minimal. And then from there, if that feels normal and you can get the pelvis to stay neutral, then you can sweep the leg in the air behind you as long as everything else is able to stay kind of in the same position. And then you're going to want to back your weight up and kind of lean back as if you're pushing the floating leg to the wall behind you. And then you hang out there and breathe, and then you try the same thing on the other side. You float the foot, and then you sweep the leg, and you kind of back your weight up, push yourself backward, and hold and stay, hold and stay, hold and stay. You'll feel your base leg working really hard. And then back down, and then you'll come up to standing any way you want to, and then again, take a walk around the room. So, it has lots of elements in it. It has the element of a hip hinge, which if anybody's gone to physical therapy for their back, that's how they tell you to pick things up off the floor. You bend at the knees and fold at the hip versus a round back. So from a therapeutic standpoint, it's actually really good. It also teaches you the standing hip list, which I've introduced in the past, which is what happens when you take a step forward. You want clearance of a leg to swing through for kind of a nice healthy gait cycle. So if you don't have that, to be pitched forward can really feel kind of different. And then it has the element of really loading the legs so that your thigh bone is vertically over your heels. A lot of times in life, we start to drift forward and have a lot of weight on our toes without even really knowing it. Let's see. Hi there. Hi. Okay, but anyways, so when we drift forward on our toes, puts a lot of excess work in our toes, which actually ultimately will cause some toe issues, bunions, neuromas. So if you back your weight up on your heels, you really load your legs appropriately. Not only does it help osteoporosis, but it also actually helps you to strengthen the backside of your body better and more appropriately, and then less damage done to the toes. So hip hinge, number 1. Pelvic lift is that foot float, number 2, and then swinging the leg up and backing your weight up so your base leg is really loading over the heel, number 3. Again, great for balance, great for your hips, a lot of hamstring loading, but it's hamstring loaded in a stretched position. So instead of always passively stretching your hamstrings, which is not the worst thing, but I think to actually get better range of motion and better strength, you're going to want to stretch your hamstrings with some load, right? With some actual weight on them in a stretched position. So that was a lot. That was a lot for one simple exercise, but that is the arabesque, right? So try it. It's really easy to do. I think that's the nice thing is you don't have to get on the floor. You can just do it as soon as you've got a countertop, or I think a bathroom sink is nice because it's a little bit lower, a couch, something to pitch forward on. Practice some of that little foot float. That's hard. It's actually a little easier than being upright in some ways. And then add the leg lift. Give yourself a hamstring stretch, load the hamstrings. It's a great exercise, multifunctional. That's what I'm all about. Anything that you can kill multiple birds with one stone, it's great. Okay, that's it. Pretty short and sweet. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And yes, it is my birthday tomorrow, and I have no problem saying that it's the big 4-0. But this is my go-to exercise right now, because if for some reason you feel like your glutes are not turning on the way that you would want them to, or your hamstrings feel excessively tight, or you just feel like you could use a little core and balance workout, this will kick in all of those things, which is wonderful. But yeah, so if you have any questions, write me in the comments. You can find me at katielush.com, KATYLUSH.com. You can also find me on Instagram at the Katie Lush, and I think that's it. Anyways, I'll see you here next week for some more, hopefully, multifunctional exercises in one simple movement. All right, take care. Have a great Wednesday.